I'm Alan Walker again. This is my second booktube video, continuing my TBR or to be read list. Last time I talked about my fiction books that were on my to be read list, and this time I'm going to talk about my nonfiction books. So when I read nonfiction books, they tend to fall into ancient history. I really like the history of the Greeks or the Romans or the Persians. I also really like the period surrounding the Revolutionary War. I also like to read books about theology, books about Christianity. So without further ado, let's take a look at my to-be-read stack nonfiction. History, it's usually history. I've had this book for like 5 years and I cannot make myself read it because it looks intimidating. It looks really academic as far as the prose is concerned, but this is Rome and Jerusalem by Martin Goodman, who is, I guess, a historian about both Jewish history and Roman history. This is about the intersection of the Romans and the Jewish people throughout history. It starts with a history of Rome and how it got founded, and a history of the Jewish people and how they ended up citizens of Rome after Rome conquest, and how the two people intermingled and lived together, how the Jews lived under Roman law. Sometimes it was kinder and friendlier than others. Some of the emperors expelled the Jews from Rome. Some of them expanded the rights of the Jews. In 70 AD, the not yet Emperor Titus completely sacked, annihilated, razed to the ground, tore the temple brick by brick of Jerusalem as on the orders of his dad, Emperor Vespasian. So it covers really up to that time, and I think a little bit after, but it's going to be interesting to read about how the Jews and the Romans lived together. My wife got me this book for Christmas, The Fall of Carthage by Adrian Goldsworthy. Adrian Goldsworthy is one of my favorite historians. He has a really easy academic prose. It's not quite as breezy and flowing as a later author I'm going to talk about, but it's also not as dense as Edward Gibbon Fall of the Roman Empire, which is just so dense. I can't really read history books that are just weighed down and don't really tell a story, and Goldsworthy is really good at keeping the historical detail while also telling a compelling narrative. So this right here is about Carthage and the Punic Wars against Rome, mostly about the Second Punic War with Hannibal Barca right here, one of the greatest military generals of all time. This book's going to account the utter Roman defeats at Lake Trasimene, and one of the greatest military defeats of all time that is still studied by our military today, the Battle of Cannae. And so that's fascinating to me. As I said, I really like military fantasy. I also like military historical fiction, military fiction. I really like brilliant tacticians and strategies and the movement of troops. That's why once kind of gunpowder and automatic weaponry became involved, wars interest me slightly less, because it seems like there's less tactics and movements of troops than there was in ancient warfare. So I really like books about ancient warfare, so I'm super psyched to read The Fall of Carthage. Boom! John Adams by David McCullough. This is a beast! My wife is currently reading this book because it's on her TBR list, and I saw her reading and stole it from her essentially. She was reading it earlier today because I said I wanted to put this in this video because I love John Adams. He is obnoxious and disliked, according to 1776, which is my favorite movie of all time, happens to be the best musical of all time as well. I have seen it over and over and over and over again, and I love the period surrounding the Second Continental Congress. I love John Adams, despite the fact that he was the lamest of all ducks after Washington, and he invoked the Alien and Sedition Act, which put people in jail for saying bad things about it in the newspaper. But I still really, really like John Adams the man, so I'm excited to read this book. I've read 1776 by David McCullough, which is a fantastic book, so I'm excited to read his take on John Adams as well. Masters of Command by Barry Strauss. This book was given to me by a very good friend of mine, and it's kind of a leadership book on how to lead in the modern day, based on the leadership philosophies of some ancient generals, Alexander, Hannibal, and Julius Caesar. I love all three of these men. I think they're brilliant tacticians in their own right, and so I'm eager to see what kind of lessons we can pull from the way they led men to how we can lead others today. The penultimate book on my TBR nonfiction list is another Goldsworthy title, How Rome Fell. So there's really two periods of Rome. There's the monarchy and the republic, early Rome, and then there's the empire with Emperor Augustus, who kind of got rid of the republic and established the emperors, which is generally what you probably think about when you think about Rome. I happen to like early Rome on up until the death of Julius Caesar, and then the transition of power to the imperium of Emperor Augustus all the way through the Julio-Claudians. The early empire is really kind of where my interest kind of wanes. The later empire, which fell in 476 and continued on with the Eastern Byzantine Empire until the 1400s, that is less interesting to me. So I don't really have a wealth of knowledge on the fall of Rome, other than just the standard causes of it, the blanket causes that kind of everybody who's a student of Rome knows. So I'm excited to read this because this starts at about 200 AD all the way through 476 with the deposition of Romulus Augustulus by Odoacer. So I'm eager to see and read more about how Rome fell, but this is a beast of a book. Fortunately, Goldsworthy is really readable. And finally, on my nonfiction TBR list, we have Alexander the Great by Philip Freeman. I really like Philip Freeman. He's less detail-oriented than Goldsworthy, but his narratives read like they're a fiction book. I especially like his Julius Caesar biography. I liked it so much I based my Julius Caesar lecture in my Latin classes on his biography of Julius Caesar. It's just breezily written, really easy to read. There's cliffhangers between chapters, just like a narrative. It's like you're reading a fiction book or a thriller, and they are really, really big page turners. So I'm excited to read about Alexander the Great, probably the greatest conqueror of all time. So great that many, many later Roman conquerors all wished that they could be him. So I'm eager to read this as well. Anyway, thank you for tuning into my nonfiction TBR video. Again, I'm excited, super happy to be here on the BookTube. I like talking about books, guys. If you like this video, please tell me so in the comments. If you didn't, you can also say that in the comments, and that's fine, and we can have a dialogue on what I can do better. I'm hoping these will improve over time. This is my first time doing it, so we'll see. But thanks for watching.